Okay, hello everyone. So we're live. We're doing a Facebook Live here. This is Pitching and Presenting for Noobs with myself, Paul Lancaster from Plan Digital UK and Newcastle Startup Week. And I'm joined today by presentation expert Simon Raybould. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself, Simon?
Yeah, started life as a university researcher. Spent 24 years in research. I have a PhD in geography and statistics. I got more interested eventually in how presentations, how science was communicated rather than the actual research, because I kept getting asked the same stupid questions by the same stupid politicians over and over.
Okay.
And I realized that what we needed to do was explain better. So I spent some time then researching how communication works or doesn't work.
Okay.
My first clients were all universities, and it's branched out from then, so that now I work with pre-startups all the way up to, I think my biggest client is Dell Computers.
Wow. Okay.
This is not a Dell that we're looking at, so hello Dell. We're not using Dell, no.
So I was just working it out. I think we first met each other probably about 10 years ago, you know. So I was working
Wow.
I was working for Project Northeast, which is a local enterprise agency, and I was helping to run a website called voluntaryskills.com. And that was all about upskilling volunteers and staff that work for third sector organisations in Chile. So it was my first management role, and I was doing a lot more kind of speaking at events and going to events. So one thing I didn't have much experience of up to that point, except for when I was at university, was giving presentations. So I came along to one of your courses, which I found really, really useful, and I've got one of your books as well at home.
All right, which one?
It's like a brightly coloured kind of
Presenting Made Simple, I think,
that.
or could be the Little Big Voice book. It's got a
yeah,
Little Big
that
Voice
one.
book, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was at Blackfriars we were doing it, and you had us lying on the floor,
That's right.
doing breathing exercise and all kinds of stuff like that. But some of the tips that you gave there have stayed with me.
Cool.
I've tried to.
10 years worth of
Yeah.
So this whole thing about presenting for noobs thing, that's nonsense, right? You've been doing this for 10 years.
Well, I don't think of myself as an experienced speaker, or and I think, although I have done a lot, I have given a lot of talks at events. I've spoken at conferences, exhibitions. I've given small little talks. I've done my own events and stuff like that. I think because I don't do it very often. Like
Right.
it's not like I'm doing it all the time. So every time I do it, it's a big deal. And I have to really put a lot of thought into what message am I trying to get across.
That's a really common, a really common thing, because it's okay for me because I'm doing presentations 2, 3, 4 on a bad week, 4 or even 5 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
I try and avoid that if I can. But for most people, it's a once in a blue moon thing. It's I've got to make a presentation to the board. Good, done, right? I can forget about it, and they forget about it for the next 6 months, and then suddenly there's another presentation to the board. And one of the biggest problems that I have working with people is that every time they do it, it feels like the first time.
Yeah. So so for things like that, let's see we're going to talk about tips and advice for people like that. But I mean, for example, tomorrow I've got to give a talk at a school careers event in front of, I think, 350 kids, plus
I can't help you.
plus school staff and university staff and businesses that are there to give careers advice.
Right.
So it's a pretty
hard audience, hard crowd.
Broad audience, and so I'm trying to appeal to the kids ideally. And I mean the title of the presentation, I just had to come up with something, was entrepreneurs wanted to apply here.
Okay.
Because I basically, what I'm trying to say is I want to open the kids' eyes to what's around them, like the opportunities all around them, and show them that whether they want to start their own business or their own project or whatever, having entrepreneurial skills is a really valuable thing for employers. Employers are actually looking for people with that. So 2
immediate tips I can give you there. Right. The first is, are we talking
don't try to be cool.
Are we talking about sixth formers?
Yeah, it'll be like GCSEs.
Right. Okay, but in which case, the use of the word entrepreneur.
Don't use it.
Don't use it.
Right, okay.
You know what it means. I know what it means. Joe Public knows what it means.
Okay.
Maybe on a good day. Do people at school know what it means? Because they're sitting there going, right, I'm coming to a presentation about being fresh.
I'm going to make notes here. That's what talking about.
So it's a question of putting yourself in the audience's shoes. And not using the jargon that you and I use to talk to each other, but using the jargon that they use to talk to each other. When you're committed to the use of the word entrepreneur now, that's done what's done. But maybe for next time, what you need to think about is a phrase that describes what entrepreneur is.
Right.
Being your own boss, working for yourself.
Yeah.
I've just been to see School of Rock on Friday, so I've got the phrase "stick it to the man" stuck in my head. So maybe it's would you like to stick it to the man?
Yeah.
It is obviously that's going to go down quite interestingly at a school, but it's a question of making sure that you use their terminology, not yours.
Yeah. Okay. That's good advice.
Because even if you explain the terminology, and of course you'll explain it. Even if you explain the terminology, every time you use that word, there's a half second where they're going, what does that mean? Oh, yeah. And in that half second, they're thinking, not listening.
Okay. Good idea. Yeah. I mean, I remember years ago when I used to help with the Shell Livewire program, which was a youth enterprise scheme funded by Shell. It was aimed at 16 to 30-year-olds, like helping them start their own business. But because I'm a marketing background and copywriting, and when you write, you try to come up with short sentences and get the copy down as much as possible. So we used to talk about startups, but like
what was a startup?
Yeah, and even now, as I say, you've got Newcastle startup. Some people automatically think startup means a tech startup.
So yeah.
Or like
and that's what most of them do when they're starting.
So, okay.
And the second tip I was thinking about there is you've got a very broad audience there.
Yeah, too broad.
It's too broad. You can't please all of the people all of the time.
Right. So just pick one or two. One of the kids.
The kids. Right. Okay. So I want you to triage your audience. Okay. So you come across the term triage, medical term, right? Okay. Some people can't be helped, and all you do is just leave them to die. Some people are going to get better. This is the state of the NHS at the moment. And some people are going to get better even if you don't intervene, so they don't need you. But the people you should help, if you've got limited resources, are those people who, if you don't intervene, will die. If you do intervene, will live.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about doing that to your audience. Some people are going to be entrepreneurs come hell or high water. They've just got that mindset. They're unemployable in the traditional sense, and they are it. They're going. All you have to do is go right. You can be an entrepreneur, and they're up their way.
Yeah.
Other people are never going to be entrepreneurs, come hell or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. If you say to them, "You've got to start your own business, or I will kill you," they just look at you and go, "And just wait for the bullet between the eyes." And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are like that, and we need those people. And actually, if I had my choice, I'd be one of those people. I don't like being an entrepreneur. It's one of the things I've got to do wrong. So the people you should be aiming at are those people who are on the cusp. Is that making sense? Yeah. So at that point, it becomes a question of going, what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? How can you maximize the former? How can you mitigate the latter? Is that making
sense? Yeah.
And you're doing it for them. You're doing it in their way of thinking. So the things that motivate you and I are not necessarily the things that motivate them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm 55. I've got past the point now of needing to be motivated by money.
Yeah.
My kids have got their own. They've gone. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. How old are yours?
9 and 6.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Are you listening, Facebook? Right. 9 and 6. It just gets worse. More expensive, more grey hairs, just gets worse. But mine have gone, right? My mortgage is paid off, my kids have gone. I'm at the point now where I'm at the point now of being motivated by fun. I mean, I do need money as well, obviously. I don't work for free all the time. But I'm at the point of being motivated by fun. I'm at the point of being motivated by clients who are worth working with. I'm not motivated, completely at least not motivated, by the need to get out of bed and earn a living every day. Now, kids at school might, or at least they might think they are. That makes sense. Now, you know and I know that that's not what drives entrepreneurs, but at that point, it might be what they think drives entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So the things you might want to sell, and I'm not saying this is the case, I'm saying this is the stuff for you to consider.
Yeah.
You might want to consider things like, would you like to work for yourself so that you don't have the rigidity of 9 to 5, just like being at school with a bell telling you where to go?
Okay. Yeah.
Or you might want to say, would you like to work for yourself and run your own company so that you can drive a Lamborghini? Would you like to work for yourself? I've never driven a Lamborghini. I don't know.
I quite like to.
Yeah, I kind of like the option.
I don't think I want to own one, but I'd like to drive one.
I'd like to.
If anyone out there can hook us up with a Lamborghini,
that'd be cool. I can tell you where to just park it outside my house. I'll come along. I'll take the photographs. I pretend to drive the Lamborghini, and I won't pay the insurance.
Or a Lambo. I think that's
a Lambo. Yeah. But not the yellow ones, right? They're just not cool. Right? It's got to be one of the classic ones, right? Or you find things that you think are going to be their motivators, or if you want to, right at the beginning of the presentation, you do a hands up who, and you find out what motivates them.
Yeah. That leads you on nicely to another question I was going to say is like, what about asking people for, put your hands up with it? Because sometimes people do it and sometimes they don't, and then kind of.
At school, at school you've got an advantage because they're used to responding to the authority figure at the front of the classroom who says, "Who can tell me?" Okay. In real world presentations, that's much harder. Right? There's a number of reasons why they don't. The first is the obvious one, that they just don't want to be there. Right? Yeah. We've all gone in, we've given a presentation, and you look around the room and you can just see people going,
impress me.
And it ain't gonna happen, son, because I don't want to be here.
My boss
may become, or there's the chair fillers over there where they go, I'm here for the free demos. And trying to get them to stick their hand up is tricky. Or there are the shy people, and then there are the introverts, the people who don't want to speak out for one reason or another. Some reasons good, some reasons bad. The trick lies in giving them an opportunity to give you information without forcing them to go, sir, look at me. Because if you do that, the introverts and the shy people, and those are two different groups, they overlap a little bit, they're just going to go, and nothing's going to happen. So the best way to start off with the questions is to give them closed questions and show them how you want that question answered. A closed question is a yes, no. So it's the easiest kind of question to handle. For example, put your hand up if you rode a bike to work today. And what will happen then is the extroverts will go, and the introverts will go, but it means the same thing. You've got the commitment, and if you're standing there at the front of the stage looking for it, you can see that gives you as much information as that. And once you've got them started off like that, you can gradually build up. So could somebody give me an example of? But if you go straight into can somebody give me an example of, right from the very beginning, half your audience is going to be alienated, and you're only going to get the show-off half. The smart-ass half who wants to be difficult.
Okay, that's good. I was in an event yesterday where there was some startups pitching, and one of the businesses was really good. They asked the question, hands up if you've been to a restaurant before. Wow. So like everybody
put their hand up.
And then it was like, hands up if you've got a smartphone, so it's slightly less than everyone. It was quite good because it got a bit of a chuckle.
Yeah, and it gets people into the habit of But the one thing you don't do is force them to overcommit too soon, because that just freaks out the introvert half the population. And once you've got them into the habit of committing, then you can start moving from yes, no's to semi-closed questions. So you say something I very often say, okay, there are 3 possible outcomes to this question: yes, or no, or don't know, don't care. And that way you've got a 3-way choice rather than a 2-way choice. And then you move on to, how did you get here today? Okay, bike, car, walk, bus, helicopter, rollerblades. So you get more, and that question has more and more options. And then gradually you move into the open response questions. The hardest type of open response question is so who can tell me what so-and-so? That's getting to that. You need to work very slowly and very carefully. And the dirty trick that quite often you'll see presenters do is, who knows so and so? I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to tell the person next to you. And that really pisses the audience off because they go, but presenters do it to get the audience into the habit of answering questions.
Okay.
So it becomes a gradual thing, starting at yes, no, to full conversation. Don't rush it.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, good stuff. Okay.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, no, really good. Looks like we've got a few people watching. It was up to slightly more to come down and
I noticed, I had a look at this, and one of my daughters said she was interested in coming. So, hello, daughter two.
But usually when I've done it, you get people watching it after the event.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So, would you have a different presentation style depending on the audience and the event? Because I think I'm quite informal. I try to be quite informal.
I've watched videos of you. You're very, very informal,
right.
very, very laid back.
And I think I said to you as well, one of the reasons I want to do that is because I don't want to act differently and put on a bit of a pretend to be something I'm not. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
When I'm speaking, but also I'm trying to put the audience at ease, and I'm trying to put the other speakers at ease as well. And I don't want to be seen as I'm the star. I don't want to be the star. I think of myself more as the host.
Right. But you're just something different from presenting there. You're chairing, you're facilitating, and you're wanting the speakers to be the stars.
Yeah. So that's with the Founders Friday event and the startup event.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's play with an idea. Let's pretend it's not this simple, but let's pretend that at one end of the spectrum you've got authority and credibility, and at the other end of the spectrum you've got approachability and friendliness and rapport.
Right.
And you trade those three things off against each other.
Yeah.
Having watched videos of you, if I'm going to be brutal,
go on.
You're too far towards the friendly rapport end,
right? Okay.
Which undermines your credibility and authority.
Okay, cool.
It makes you look like a nice guy. Everybody loves you. But if you said, fire, leave the building, people are going to go, are you sure, Paul? I think I'll just finish this off first.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, my weakness as a presenter is that I go too far to the other end.
Right.
I go, look, here are the facts.
Yeah. But again, you're the expert. So
absolutely.
You're going to talk as the expert.
But I do tend to veer towards arrogance. There's a thin line between expert and arrogant.
Okay.
And I have to pull myself down and try and be nice to people.
Try to be nice.
fake liking them.
You've always been nice to me. So
well, I screwed up recently because I was giving a presentation. Somebody said, I don't believe this. Because, I know that everything I do is hardcore research science, right? And there's a bloke went, I don't believe this. And I'm afraid my response was, well, I don't believe in Thursdays, but they come round every week.
I don't think that was funny, but he
didn't.
No.
Yeah, he didn't. Everybody else in the room thought it was hysterical. But I hacked off that member of the audience. Once you've hacked them off, you've lost them.
You're getting booed and heckled.
Yeah. But I got away with that because I've got a number of advantages that he didn't have. For example, I'm at the front of the room, which gives me an automatic kudos.
You got the mic.
I've got the mic. Well, I wasn't using mic, but yeah. And daft as it sounds, being 6 foot tall and a bloke I've got all the demographic advantages. 6 foot tall bloke with white hair. Okay. Speaking of which, see, I wasn't grey until 2 weeks ago, and then my daughters did something, and that's all gone grey.
What you got gravitas.
Gravitas, that's credibility, which means that I can throw authority at him, but it's not necessarily a good idea because it just hacks him off.
I suppose you need to though to control, because you probably do get every now and then you get some troublemakers in the room.
I don't.
Right. So here's you have to control.
Right. So here's how you don't get troublemakers in the room. You establish
destroy them publicly.
They have an accident falling down the stairs before they get in. You establish your authority and credibility right at the beginning, even before you start.
Yeah.
So the way I stand is very different from the way you stand. Okay. You stand. I've watched the videos of you. I've seen the room, and you stand touching the lectern. You stand to the side of the stage. You shuffle your feet. You're wearing very informal clothing. You have a habit of looking down as opposed to eyeballing the audience.
Yeah.
Now, if you see videos of me standing, it's absolutely 6 foot. I'm as broad as I can go. The audience knows that I'm the expert in the field. I have been introduced using the word doctor. Now, that's the only time I ever use the word doctor, is to give myself credibility on stage. And the person that introduces me says, right, welcome on stage, Dr. Simon Raybould. As one of my daughters said, my PhD, it's a bit like a brownie badge, but slightly harder. Thanks for that, child. But it gives you that authority and that little bit of credibility on stage. I'm standing tall. I pitch my voice to really push and carry at an audience. And I use something called a credibility statement, not an introduction. So here's a big difference. An introduction tells people about you. A credibility statement tells them why they should shut the hell up and listen to you. And those two things.
So how would you do that then? What's an
okay, well, let me give you an example. Okay, a credibility statement wants to be, what are they building outside?
It wants to be building some student flats at a hotel. So we're right at the
all right. It wants to be short and overwhelming. Now I'm going to cite a guy, and it wants to be so that you can't argue with it. Okay, so I'm going to cite a guy called Mike. Mike, if you're listening, hello, Mike Lever. Mike, at one point, was able to walk on stage and go, and I'm making this up, right? So don't assume that Mike actually does this, but he could walk on stage and go, hello, my name is Mike Lever. I'm probably the best sales trainer in the country. And that's a hell of an introduction, but you could argue with it. Whereas now, after an awards ceremony a couple of years ago, Mike could walk on stage and go, hello, my name is Mike Lever. I have just been voted the best sales trainer in the country. You can't argue with that. It's a fact. He has been voted sales trainer of the year. About 3 years ago, I think now, so it's probably losing its credibility, but you get the point. Now, if you're there for sales training and to learn how to be a better salesperson, all of a sudden, that's an overwhelming reason to shut up and listen. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
As opposed to saying, hello, my name is Mike Lever, I've done this, 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 yada. So, for example, if I'm walking on stage to do a presentation skills training workshop, I don't say, hello, my name is Dr. Simon Raybould. I spent 24 years as a researcher at Ham Centre. I left university when I was the manager for the UK's largest social science research unit. I've been a fire eater, I've been at this, I've been at that, I've been a lighting designer for dance companies, What I would say is, hello, my name is Dr. Simon Raybould. I've written 3 books on presentations, one of which became a bestseller. And stop. And stop at that point. On my personal favourite credibility statement of all time, this is from somebody who's asking for funding for a youth club for martial arts. I'll change her name. Hello, my name is Suzanne. I have black belts in 4 different martial arts, 2 of them at top down. And you're kind of thinking, I'm not going to argue with that. That's a damn good reason for listening to that person. She doesn't give us background. She doesn't give us history. She doesn't apologise. She doesn't justify. She just gives us an overwhelming single 2-sentence reason to shut the hell up and listen.
That's good, because I definitely don't do that. Like, I know that quite often when I get asked to give talks, people want me to talk about who I am, where I've come from, what I've done, all that sort of stuff. So. But I'm at the point now in my career where I start to almost bore myself, because it's like, I did this and I did that, and it's like such a meandering career. So it's like,
even if that's what they're asking you to do, you need to give them that credibility statement at the beginning so that they care about your journey. Right? So the first thing you do is give them your end point. Hello, my name is, I have got to here. And then they go, oh, that's cool. And then you tell them how you got there. So the analogy I sometimes use is have you ever, personal story, an example here. My wife shouted upstairs yesterday, would you like a cup of tea, Simon? For the record, the default answer is always yes, always cup of tea, right? But would you like a cup of tea, Simon? Now that's not a difficult question, but it took me about 6 seconds to answer. Because it wasn't until she used my name that I realised I was supposed to have been listening. And at that point, my brain had to play back everything. Oh, yeah, thanks, mate. Right. a better way for her to do it would for her to have gone, Simon, would you like a cup of tea?
Mm.
So that I knew I was supposed to be listening from then on.
I say this to my wife all the time. She'll talk to me, but because she doesn't say Paul. I think she's talking to the kids, or she's talking to herself or something like that. But she doesn't go anywhere.
I'm not doing marriage counselling on air. That's your own problem, right? Relationships. The only relationship advice I can give anybody is do what I did, which is frankly marry a saint. That's it. I won the lottery. I won the lottery. But the point is that you give somebody a reason to listen first.
Mm.
You go, Simon, Paul, would you like a cup of tea? Yeah. And then they know that they are supposed to be listening, as opposed to listening to find out at the end why they should have been paying attention all the way through.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make?
Yeah.
So the opening is really important. The opening is all about this is a damn good reason for listening.
Okay, great. That's really useful because I've won awards. I'm the 2-time collaborator of the year.
There you go.
And I've just been shortlisted for it again for the 3rd year.
Fantastic. So if your presentation is about how to network
Collaboration.
There you go.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
What you don't do is if your presentation is about tech, you don't use that one.
No. So, well, I guess I'm there to really talk about Newcastle Startup Week. So that's the thing I talk about. Yeah.
So you get, okay, I'm the founder of Newcastle Startup Week. We have helped X 100 do this thump. Yeah. And I don't know what the figures are that you would use. That's that's your own. Yeah. That's your own responsibility to make up those lies. Yeah. I mean, to do that research.
Excellent. Okay.
Is that?
Yeah. No, that's really good. So so you touched on it a little bit, but being put on a different style depending on the audience or the venue. So yeah. I know that, like say, when I'm doing the Founders Friday, I think I do deliberately want it to be informal, right? Because I just want to be conversation. Yeah. But then when I get invited to give us a talk at an event where I'm not the host or anything, and I'm just going to come on and make an impact, then I need to be different. And
you change the way you present your personality. Yeah. It's not that building's falling down. It's not that you change your personality because that's fake.
Yeah.
And the audience will smell fake a mile off. Unless you're a professional actor, I respect, neither of us can cut it as a professional actor. I did for a while, but it's too much like our work. It's about finding those bits of your personality that are appropriate for the venue, for the message, for the audience. So if you draw a Venn diagram of it, it's venue, audience, message. That's a really good idea. Let's draw a Venn diagram in the air and hope it works Facebook Live. So, venue, audience, the kind, right? And the bits of your presentation that you show are those bits that are appropriate to all three.
Okay.
It may be that what you're doing is entirely appropriate for the interaction of venue, audience, and so on. But so many people do it without thinking, and they end up pitching it wrong. So, for example, I will change the way I present, not just depending upon my message, not just upon the audience, but also on the venue. Because some venues force me to be further away from the audience than others. Yeah. So if I'm on a formal stage and I'm raised up and I'm 10 meters away from the front row of the audience, I've got to be more formal because they're here, I'm there. And there's a whole science that's called proxemics, which talks about how people interact with each other based upon body space and distances and all that kind of jazz. And if I'm up here and they're down there and we're at least 10 meters away and the back of the audience is 50 meters away, they need a formal presentation. And if I give them an informal presentation, they think I'm rubbish. Is that making sense?
A lot to think about, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas if I'm in a U-shaped training room with only 20 people around the room, and I can get within 2 meters or 3 meters of anybody in the audience, if I go formal, I look like a stuck-up sanctimonious. Can we bleep this out? A stuck-up sanctimonious pillock. So you have to be much more. I was going to say something much ruder. So you have to be much more informal depending upon the venue, and what the audience expect, and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah. The one thing you never compromise is your message, because the message is the thing that you're therefore. The message is the truth. And you hear so many people saying you have to change what you're going to say depending on who you're talking to. Tosh, that's just...
Okay.
The truth is the truth.
Yeah.
It doesn't change just because somebody doesn't like it. It doesn't change just because they're too young to understand it. It doesn't change because they disagree with it. The truth is the truth is the truth. And that's just tough for everybody else. What you might change is how you present it to them. But you never, ever compromise the message.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes that makes me unpopular. Because we're back to that triaging the audience thing again. Because sometimes the audience are going, right, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you want to hear it or not. Here are the facts.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing like tomorrow at this careers, then there'll be a lot of kids there that don't really want to be there, or they're just there.
Sure.
It's like a day off.
Yes. Okay. So here's a thought then. Here's a thought. One of the things that people always ask about when they're making presentations is how to deal with the nerves. Do you get nervous?
Not really anymore, but I do.
There's a bit of
a little.
Okay, that's quite appropriate.
That's good, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
the only people who don't get
want
nervous, if you don't get nervous, it means either you don't care or you're sociopathic.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it is
so a bit of nerves is okay, right? But one of the reasons that people get nervous is because they can't tell me if I ask them how they're going to measure success. Right? So you say to them, what could go wrong? And they'll give you a list of all the things that could go wrong. And you'll say to them, okay, so how would you define a failed presentation? And they'll go, well, when those things happen. And you say to them, how would you define a successful presentation? And the best they can give you is, well, when those things don't happen. Well, if you can define failure, but you can't define success, you're on a hiding to nothing. You're bound to get nervous. And it only takes one of those things just to happen a little bit, and all of a sudden you think the presentation's a failure. So one of the things we always talk about with presentations is to define what a successful presentation would look like. Now, you're talking about kids being there who may not want to be there. Fine, cool. So,
or they just don't know.
Or they just don't know. Right,
don't
yeah,
know what
okay.
to expect.
So what would a successful presentation look like? It might look like...
Standing ovation.
Okay, right. Standing ovation, throwing money would be paper money, obviously, not coins, because that hurts. I put it to you that that's not a decent measure of success. A decent measure of success is what percentage of that audience go away and do something different.
Exactly. Which is a hard,
it's a hard thing to measure.
Thing, because when I have gone into schools to give talks, straight away, some of the kids have sent me a message on Twitter or something and said, oh, that was great, or like that's inspired me, or something like that, or they followed me on Twitter or something. So that's a good, indication.
Yeah, sometimes you can't measure it directly. Sometimes you have to measure it by proxy.
Yeah.
So it may be that a successful measure of success, a good measure of success for you tomorrow would be, I've got 100 kids in the room. I'm making that number up. I've got 100 kids in the room. I will know the presentation has been successful if 10 of them follow me on Twitter or whatever it is. So you pick your metric and you pick your threshold. And that gives you a way of measuring whether your presentation has been a success or not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You want people to do something as a result of what you said, even if it's just taking it on board and then changing the way they work or the way they think.
Yeah, when we talk about presentation, we're really pretentious about this. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Really pretentious.
Changing.
Your presentation is to change the world. It may just be a tiny bit of it, but if nothing has changed, what the F were you doing there in the first place? What was the point? Your job is to change the world. You might want to change the world via your audience, which just makes it harder than changing the world yourself. But if you're not going to change the world, what the hell are you doing it for? Or at least if your aspiration is not to change the world, what the hell are you doing it for? So you have this measure of what would a success look like? How will I know if I've measured, if I've hit it or not?
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So, for example, I did a presentation to the Society of Proofreaders and Editors recently.
Right.
Oh, you have no idea how nerve-wracking that is.
Pedantic, really.
I couldn't possibly say.
Typos on you.
I couldn't possibly say there were no typos on my slide. You have no idea how many times I had my tame proofreader go through those slides, right, to the point where she cried.
As you lose instant credibility if you did have.
Absolutely. So measure one, get through the end without them. But measure two was I've got 60 people in the room. How will I know if it's been successful? Well, it's obviously the feedback forms they give to the conference organizer. But what means more to me is how many of them touch base with me afterwards and say, okay, I'm going to do this. Or it may be that at the end of my slide deck, I go, I've told you what to do. If you want to know how to do it, you download this PDF. Okay, and that's a really good quantitative measure of success. If I've got 56 people in the room, if nobody downloads that PDF, I know I've missed the mark. If everybody downloads that PDF, I know they've been forced to do it by the conference organizer. But if, let's say, half of them download that PDF, I know that was a really successful presentation.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's the best presentation I've got. I definitely when I've gone in with a very clear focus on what message I want to get across, who's in the audience, and then people have come up to me straight after and have said, that was great. How do we do this? How do we get them up? So that's
a good start, but don't forget that doing it in the room is different from doing it back in their office. How you measure that is different depending upon what presentation it is you're trying to do. I mean, most of my clients are people who are, let's say they're making a presentation about the new computer software their company's adopted. Well, they know the presentation has been successful if 50% of the people in the room immediately start using the new software. When they get back to that kind of.
Okay, cool. All right.
Sorry, that was a really long-winded, ranty.
Well, I'm finding it useful. I hope other people are, if they're watching this.
Well, if there's anybody watching, we know they are. If there's not, it's fine.
Right, so I'm looking over there. You've got off-screen. You've got a flute, right? So do you want to explain that? Also, I was going to ask about props.
Okay, well, that's the
Is that
penny whistle, right? We're about to discover that my wife is the musician. That's it. That's all I can do. Yeah? The reason I've got this is because when I watch videos of you, do you remember all those breathing exercises I gave you 10 years ago? Not doing them now, right? But I've noticed that your voice is really, really light.
Okay, yeah.
And this is a model of how your voice works.
Right. Okay.
Power, the Z comes in there.
Yeah.
It turns into a sound at the flange here, that bit there.
Yeah.
And it's turned into notes there.
Okay.
That's how so by analogy, power, generation, that's that bit there, happens in your vocal folds, and it turns into notes like here. So it's a really crude, simple model of how your voice works. It's much more complicated than that, but that's a teaching prop. There's a lot of research that says that power and authority and credibility comes from this bit here, where you breathe and how you push yourself forward. And there's an awful lot of research that goes the other way and says if they can't understand you, they don't trust you. And whether they understand you or not comes from how clear you are.
Right. Okay.
So I've just got that with me because when I've listened to you, you're quite easy to understand except for your accent.
All right. Do you think it's a strong accent?
Nah. Right. But if English is not your first language, right. But in terms of credibility and authority, one of the things I would suggest you do is practice more breathing from here.
Got my elasmus.
Rather than here. Or just take
deeper breathing. No?
Yeah, deeper breathing. Don't just go deep, because if people go deep, they go and all they do is expand the top of their lungs. What I'm looking for is lower breathing. Okay. Loads of good things happen when you do that. You get less nervous, your voice goes lower, it sounds more authoritative, you slow down, all kinds of good things happen.
Okay.
And that lower voice thing is really important. There's a shed load of research that suggests that people trust you more, like you more, if your voice feels more natural to them.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I know that some people have got an advantage. So you've got quite you've got a good voice.
I've got years of practice and training.
And a good voice for radio and voiceovers.
I've got a face for radio. I'll give you that one. It's not going to work.
What if you don't though? What if you don't have?
All right, so it's not about having the perfect voice. It is about using your voice better.
Right.
Okay. So although I just said that lower voices get trusted more than higher voices, if that was literally true, men would be trusted more than women.
Right. Okay.
Right, because all the things being equal, and this is a generalization, but women tend to be shorter than men. They tend to have higher voices than men. They tend, whatever. So it's not about the literal pitch. It's about the comfort of your pitch.
Right.
Okay, so if you're sounding anxious and nervous, let me just give you the anxious and nervous voice. This is not going to work over a cheap microphone and a headset. But so here I am, talking in quite a nervous way. Hello, my name's Dr. Simon Raybould. I'd like you to convince you that you need to come on my training courses and give me a couple of £100 for. I will change your life, but I want a couple of £100 to do it. Right? Versus, hello, my name's Dr. Simon Raybould. I want you to come on one of my training courses. I will change your life, but I do want a couple of £100 to do it.
Okay.
You see the difference? And one of those is just because I'm breathing here, and the higher one, the anxious sounding one, is because I was breathing here.
Okay.
So it's not that I'm lower in pitch, although I am. It's not just because I'm lower in pitch. It's because the higher pitch that I use is the pitch that everybody uses when they're lying.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It's
I don't think I'm lying.
No, but you're nervous.
Probably because there's a lot.
There's a lot riding on things.
Yeah, well, it's pretty informed, but there's a lot going on in my head.
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
right,
Is everybody here? Is everybody happy? Is this going on?
Hesitations,
or the stage management stuff, all that kind of stuff, and that fills your head up. Absolutely. You could do with a stage management technical operator to take all of that away.
Yeah.
Now, that's a luxury that I've got that most people don't always have. But have you ever, here's a question for you. Did you ever, when you were at school, tell your teacher, I did do the homework, but the dog ate it? Or anything along those lines?
Probably.
You lied to your teacher? And I will put money on the fact that your teacher knew you were lying because of the way your voice was.
Okay.
Now, they may not have done anything about it because they may have had bigger fish to fry, and they may not have wanted to put you in detention because they're thinking, if I put Paul in detention, damn it, that means I'm going to have to put 95% of the class in detention. And you know what? I'd really rather go home after school today than sit with this lot for detention, right? So they might have let you off, but they knew. Yeah. And the reason they knew was because your voice did this and you went tense. Yeah. And as soon as you do that, you lose credibility and you lose authority. It's why coppers have this slow, low. It's why BBC News presenters have a more comfortable voice. And it's all about how you breathe.
Okay, right. Okay. So is there some information? Well, there will be information on your books, but have you got stuff on your website?
There's
like techniques.
If you go to, make sure I get the URL correct. If you go to
check it if you want.
Tell you what, just email. I will put it in the comments below. Okay. There's a free online course about your voice. Okay. It's not as good as face-to-face training, but it's better than nothing. I think it's onlinetraining.presentationgenius.info. In fact, I know it is onlinetraining.presentationgenius.info.
And if it's not,
oh, it is. It is definitely there. But if you go there, there are about a dozen courses. The bottom two, don't buy the bottom two because they're charged at £999.
Right. Okay.
They are there just for beta testing so that people can have a look at them. Okay. If you're dumb enough to buy a £999 course, I will not give you the money back. Okay? Good. I will take the money and run. Okay. So don't buy the time management course and the voice and the camera course down the bottom. But there's courses there on various things. But the one that we're talking about for the voice stuff is currently free. Okay. It's not free all the time, but it's currently free.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I definitely found it useful. And it's 10 years ago, but when I came on the course with you and you had us doing the breathing techniques, but I've not done anything formal since then. Really.
You should.
I need to do it. Okay, we need to do it.
Okay.
We need to arrange a session after this. And then you've got your books as well, obviously. So the one we talked about before, is this your latest book?
Oh, this one. Yeah, this one.
I feel like Jonathan Ross here or something.
Sorry, Presentation Genius. It's not the book. It's not the book title I would have chosen. The publishers chose this one for me because I would have wanted to call it "Make Your Presentation Slightly Less Crap." But it's really hard to get W.H. Smith to stock a book called "Make Your Presentations a Little Bit Less Crap." And publishers really knew what they were doing because they came to me and said, "Would you write this?"
That's
and
good.
I did. Bestseller.
Right.
Number 6 in. I have to say, if you go into W.H. Smith or you're walking through the airport and you see your book on the bestsellers list, it is as cool as it sounds.
Yeah.
The downside is that number 6 is on row 2.
Right.
So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. Just so frustrating to have been.
Let's see if we can sell a few more copies together.
Yeah, too late now. But that was great, because that gave me 3 months in which I could spend all my time researching how to make better presentations.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's 400 research papers worth of stuff in there, plus interviews, plus videos, plus God knows what.
So can you? Well, I know you'll say yes, but can you take someone who's really bad to being really good at presentations from training, or is it practice as well?
Can I guarantee it? No. I can't guarantee it, because there are some people who just don't want to learn. I can guarantee to make anybody better, but that's different from making anybody good. I would like to think that I can make anybody good enough, and that's a big distinction.
For the purpose.
Yeah, presentations are, for me, they're all about being fit for purpose. So, for example, no matter how bad you think your presentation was, if everybody in the room goes out and does the thing that you wanted them to do, that presentation's been a success.
Yeah. Okay.
On the other hand, even if you've got a standing ovation, but nobody did the thing you want them to do, that presentation was just a popular failure. Is that making sense? Yeah. So for me, presentations are a means to an end. They are a means by which we change the world, not an end in themselves. Yeah. I can't believe how much pretentious tosh that sounds.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because there is some. I mean, there's some amazing, famous talks and speeches in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, for example, Simon Sinek's "Start with Why" is reported to have been the most popular TED talk.
So, what's so good about that then? What do you think so? Because he regularly get mentioned and recommended. I haven't actually watched it. I just know the concept.
It is sufficient. Well, there you go. That tells you how good the presentation was. Even without seeing it, you know the content, because other people have gone, "Oh, I get this," and they've spread the word. Right, okay. It is so good that it got him criticism for his book, because when he wrote the book, a lot of the feedback on Amazon is,
it's not as good as he's talking.
Why did I spend $30, whatever it was? Why did I spend $30 on the book when the TED Talk is available for free, and it tells me everything I need to know in just 18 minutes, 30 minutes? Why is it so good?
It's a career making, isn't it?
It's absolutely
18 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Why is it so good? If you watch it, it's technically brilliant.
Right.
There are things that go wrong with it, such as the microphone doesn't work and all of that kind of stuff, and he looks a little bit shambolic sometimes. Right. That's really clever, and he has a habit of pushing his glasses up on his nose.
Deliberate, was it?
I don't know for sure, but it works really, really well. Okay. His audio-visual aids are brilliant. His choice of a visual aid, a flip chart, is superb. The way he has simplified his message so that you can get his message in that is really clever. We talk about something called the Twitter test, which is, could you explain the guts of your presentation in a single tweet? If yes, you know what your presentation is trying to do. If no, you need to think about it. Now, I'm not suggesting your presentation should only be a tweet long, but you get the guts. Simon Sinek can absolutely go, right, in 140 characters, he could tell you what his presentation was intended to do. And everything about his presentation, that's the best 18 minutes you're spending your life with. But the problem with TED Talks is that
they are formulaic.
In fact, one of the most recent blog posts I've written that reads have gone through the roof on this one is I've written a blog post called "Has TED Jumped the Shark?" Because it's become so popular and so successful that there comes a point where there's nothing more for it to do. And so on. But don't forget that Simon Sinek's stuff was 10 years old now. This is before TED really, really exploded, and it was new and it was novel. So up until then, presentations had all been very, very technical with shed loads of data. And TED started to break the mold because they started to look at what people learned, which is different from what you could tell them.
Right. Okay.
Is that making sense? And there's no point in telling. I could tell you a zillion technical things about making presentations, but if I give you all of that information, but you can only take in the first 3 things, all I've done is wasted my time and yours for the rest of the presentation. So it's TED was the first. If you've not seen TED.org, TED.org. If you've seen the TED.org website, great. If you haven't, do not go to the TED.org website unless you have 3 hours of your life to lose, right? Because you'll watch a video And you know how Amazon says, if you like this book, Ted doesn't. If you like that video, here's another, and you watch another, and another, and another, and 3 days later you go, do you know I'm quite hungry? Ah, that's because I've not eaten or slept for 3 days.
Better than TV.
Better than TV because it's. But there's a lot of crap on even on TED. There's a lot of crap as well because it's become so big and so popular.
So on that, on formulas, formats and formulaic, I've seen a lot of startup pitches over the years, right? And the best ones, there is a formula to it. They always follow the same structure, and you know exactly what they're going to say, and you know that they've practiced it, they've been coached to do it, right? And after a while, you're like, I get a bit sick of it. But I've spoken to some investors, and they say they actually like that because they know what's coming next, and it helps them score them and judge them better. And it also, to them, shows that startup founder has done the homework.
Yeah.
So there is.
So when I train startups, quite a lot of time they want to spend a lot of their time talking about how cool their new app is, or how cool their game is, or how cool this. Actually, that's not what investors want to know.
No.
They want to know: is there a market?
Yeah.
Can you deliver it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I mean about you don't tell people what you want to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
You tell people what they need to know, which is a whole different ball game potentially.
Yeah, there's a good. I don't know if it's. I think there's some videos available on YouTube, but there was a good Apple TV show which you could get through the iPhone as well, called Planet of the Apps. I don't know if you ever saw that. But you had Gary Vaynerchuk, right? will.i.am, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Jessica Alba.
Oh, this I've got to see.
Right.
And, I'm done. We're done. Bye. I'm gonna go watch this. Bye.
And I mean, well, they're all investors right now. They're all entrepreneurs, investors. Right? They're all into tech. I didn't realise Gwyneth Paltrow was, but probably she is. Right? But basically, the format is you've heard of the elevator pitch. It's an escalator pitch. Right? Yeah. So they have about 40 seconds to come down an escalator, and they're pitching as they're coming down towards the four judges. When they get to the bottom, the judges basically decide, yes, no, we want to know more.
Yeah.
So it's in that 30-40 seconds where they've got to pique their interest just enough that they want to know more. And then they get given the chance to talk.
And that's exactly what I mean. It's a presentation is not about telling people stuff. It's about telling them enough to do what it is.
Buy you a bit more time to keep talking. So that is one thing I noticed when I watched that is Americans are really good.
They get trained
better than British people are. Yeah. Pitching for society.
2 reasons for that. I think they get a lot more stuff about it at school than we do. And the second is that the American culture is much more in your face than ours. We're much politer. We're much more likely, and this is a massive generalisation, of course, we're much more likely to hope that the audience infers that we're brilliant.
Right. Without hitting them over the head.
Without hitting them over the head.
Okay. Yeah.
So, an American audience will do this. This is not the title. This is not the title of the book that I would have written, of course. Higher. It's not the title of the book I would have written, and that have had a thing up there. That's not our style.
Distasteful for the Brits.
Yeah, this is a sweeping generalisation. Let's not get closed down on Facebook for being racist.
But confidence.
But it's bravura. It's
Well, definitely it matches the judges as well because that's what they want. And they were talking about Gary Vaynerchuk.
Be everywhere.
Do you like Gary?
I don't know him personally.
Have you seen his stuff? Yeah. So I was looking to go to Web Summit in Dublin about 5 or 6 years ago, and they've got amazing speakers from all over the world, right? And then he came on, and he wasn't that well known at the time as like a public speaker, but he came on, and he just from the very first thing he said was like, everybody in this room is fucking wasting their time. And he just like insulted the audience, like grabbed their attention, and was just like a bit of a foul-mouthed tirade, but he's backing it up with loads of like insights. He was just like hitting you over the head with these amazing like statements and insights. And you could tell everyone in the room was like, who is that guy? Like, wow.
Why has that guy been allowed in the country?
Yeah. And I straight away following him on every social media channel. Everyone else probably did the same.
Absolutely.
But
so his idea at that point, remember I said you measure success? Gary Vee's measure of success at that point is will this build my reputation? Will
Yeah.
this build the number of people who follow me?
He wanted to make an impact.
Absolutely.
And he definitely seized the moment and gained lots of followers off the back of that. And then, so there's, well, I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk, but sometimes there's times where I'm like, oh, should I be like Gary Vee? Just like
I'm not going to say anything at that point because he's got bigger lawyers than I have.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, well, it depends what you're trying to do. It's okay. Right.
We've been at this for an hour.
Is this? Wow.
Well, yeah. Is there anything else you want to? Because I'm kind of conscious that people are going to go, stop this. And
yeah. Well, we can chunk it up into smaller bits and pull out bits of content. I mean,
hopefully there is a little.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, what's kind of the common questions that you get asked?
Okay. How do you deal with the nerves? People are going, right, but you never get nervous, Simon. Yes, I do.
I should have seen him before he came on.
I sometimes go off stage and be sick. Just the day you're not nervous. There's a difference between nerves and fear. And you want to be nervous. So I get a lot of questions about nerves, and there are loads of techniques. My blog has a load of nerve control techniques. Sorry, my YouTube channel has even more of them. youtube.com/presentationgeniusinfo. There's a load of nerve control techniques there. The other ones I get are things like, how long can the audience concentrate for? To which the answer is, for as long as you are interesting.
Okay.
Duh. And then people go, but people have only got a 10-minute attention span. In which case you go, instead of giving them a 20-minute presentation, then why not give them 2 10-minute presentations and hit the reset button in the middle to freshen them up. And the other big question I always get is, but I've got too much information to get into my 20 minutes, Simon. Well, tough shit, man.
Yeah.
You've got 20 minutes. You have to decide how much information is the stuff that you can get into that 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And the other stuff you can't, it's got to go.
Yeah.
And then they go, but if I put shed loads of screens of text on the screen so that people have got it. No, it doesn't work. Audience has a capacity for how much they can learn. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that if we throw data at them from the stage, they don't remember it.
Right. Okay.
So the best combination of using a presentation is to give them from the stage something that gets them interested enough so that they go away and download the dead trees, the PDFs, paper, and that tells them how. So the presentation tends to tell people the what, the why, and then you give them some other medium that tells them the how. And very, very often, I'm asking what are the biggest mistakes? The biggest mistakes I see are that people put the how on stage. How to be an entrepreneur, how to do this, how to do the other, how to be successful. It's very difficult to take that on board for an audience. Training is different. If we're talking about presentations, however, presentation should be about the why and perhaps the what, and the how is something that comes along later.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah, because you want them to want to go away and
do something.
Yeah.
And if the how is contained in a free download that you give them, that's a really good measure for how successful your presentation has been.
Okay. Right.
Before anybody asks, no, I don't have a free download for this. No, I've no idea what success would look like. I'm just doing it for fun.
Okay, cool. And what I was going to say about quickly like visual like slides, because some people are amazing at slides, but they spend a lot of time and effort on it. And some people have teams pulling the slides together and all that sort of stuff. But if it's usually me doing it the day before, because it's depending on the event. And
the day before is always a mistake.
Okay. Well, I do have some presentations I can give, but I'll be changing it because that's the thing. I'm not doing the same presentation every time, so it's a different audience. I'm having to rethink it. But I tend to just have screenshots of things. Just images rather than loads of text.
Absolutely. Text doesn't work.
No,
okay. Right? We know text doesn't work. The only time you get away with text, there are 2. The first is if you're putting in an impressive, cool quote up there.
Right. Okay.
In which case, the best way of doing it is to give a photograph of the person who's giving the quote, and then shut up and don't read it out loud to them, because that's just patronising and stupid. And besides, they'll read faster than you talk.
Yeah.
And the other time that text on screens work is if you want to piss the audience off. Because they will always read faster than you can speak.
Yeah. Okay.
So by all means, a couple of key words up there just to remind them what you're talking about, but there's no point putting now quite often presenters put the text up there not for the audience's point of view. They put the text up there to remind them what the hell they are supposed to be saying. But every decent modern computer runs presenter view in PowerPoint. For those of you who don't know presenter view, it's just a button you press on PowerPoint or Keynote or any of the other apps so that you see something different on your computer to what the audience sees upon its screen. That means you can have all the notes in the world you want on your screen, not on the audience's screen. So the best combination is to have your notes tucked away and hidden, and something on the big screen that gives the audience an emotional engagement with what you're saying. So if you're talking tomorrow about successful entrepreneurs and yada, 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 what you want up there is pictures of entrepreneurs or whatever, so that the kids go, I want some of that.
Okay, that's good.
We're back to the Lamborghini thing.
Well, there's a few who drive very nice cars, lovely stuff.
And there's a few who pretend to drive very nice cars, but they've hired them for the afternoon just for Photoshop opportunity. So it's about the visuals are about emotional engagement, and the speaking is about the data that goes with that.
Okay. And then I was going to say,
I don't know, your notes.
I know, my
what
notes.
you can't see is that I can't read his handwriting. It looks like Paul can't read his handwriting either, which is the
scribbles. I've noticed the technique some people do is they'll ask permission as they're speaking. They'll say, "So I'm going to talk to you about this. Is that okay?" Or what do you think of that sort of technique?
The only time that works nicely is if you are trying to get the audience, as we talked about half an hour ago, getting them into the habit of saying yes. Right? It's a sales trick where you get the audience into the habit of saying yes, so that when you try and sell them something at the end, they've already implicitly given you permission. So it goes like this. Here's the trick. I'm simplifying it. Paul, do you believe that it's an abomination that some people in the world starve to death every day because they've got no food? And the only answer you can possibly give me at that point is yes. Do you believe that the people with enough money to do something about this should do something about this? And the moral answer to that point is yes. And the third question is, would you like to make a donation? Now, you can't say no, because if you say no, it means you've been lying for the previous two. Is that making sense?
So it's
a sales technique.
So it's
do I have your permission to do this? All right, okay. Well, you gave permission to do it. I've done it. Now, would you like to buy it?
For the special
price of
£1,997 for today only.
plus tax, and it's a download that doesn't actually cost the guy anything anyway.
Okay.
So it's a very, very clever, very powerful sales technique. Morally, I won't use it myself, but it works if you. It does tend to work under certain circumstances.
Right. Okay. Well,
it won't work now because now you know to watch out for it.
Okay. Cool. Right. Well, like you say, we're up to an hour, so I think we should.
I need another cup of tea.
Well, I've found that useful. I hope anyone watching it finds it useful as well. If what would you advise be to anyone watching it to do next?
Give me money. Give me money. Give me money. Next, the one thing is figure out what your presentation is intended to achieve. Design your presentation to do that. So don't go out there and make a presentation about something. Go out there and make a presentation to change something. And that sounds like semantics, but the mindset difference is profound.
Okay, awesome. Right. Brilliant.
Cool.
Cheers.
You're welcome.
Really enjoyed that. Okay.
Take care, guys.
See you, everyone.